Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, and watched the stars pass by through the main window. He was 53 years old, and he had spent 30 of those years serving in space. His hair had turned gray, and deep lines marked his face. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice still commanded respect. The ship was heading toward the border, where the outer Reavers had been attacking small colonies for months. Earth's fleet had been sent to help, as it always was. The Galactic Council asked, and humanity answered. That was how it had been for 60 years. Behind him, Lieutenant Commander studied the tactical displays. She was only 28, but she had already earned medals for bravery in 3 different battles. Her mind was quick, and she noticed things others missed. Right now, something was bothering her. "Admiral," she said, her voice calm but careful, "I have been looking at our deployment orders. Something does not make sense." Park turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "We are being sent to the far edge of space, but the Reaver attacks are happening closer to their core worlds. Why send us so far away?" Park considered her words. He had wondered the same thing, but he had learned long ago that the Council worked in mysterious ways. They had access to information that humans did not. He trusted that they knew what they were doing. "The Council has its reasons," he said. "Our job is to follow orders and protect the border." Nodded, but she did not look convinced. She returned to her work, but the question stayed in her mind like a stone in her shoe. Far away on the Council's space station, Counselor Bay was smiling. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He had spent 20 years working to earn the Council's trust. Today, he had finally received the news he had been waiting for. The tall, insect-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes had just finished speaking. The translator device made his clicking sounds into words could understand. "Humanity has served the Council well," the Had said. "Your soldiers are brave. Your technology is useful. We believe it is time to discuss full membership for your species." Had bowed deeply. Full membership meant everything. It meant access to advanced technology that could transform Earth. It meant terraforming machines that could make dead worlds bloom with life. It meant humanity would finally be equals, not servants. "We are honored," said. "Humanity has sacrificed much for the Council. We lost many soldiers defending your borders. This recognition means everything to us." They made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Yes, your people are good at dying for causes. It is one of your best qualities." Was not sure how to take that comment, but he pushed his doubt aside. The important thing was the promise. Full membership was coming. All the sacrifice would finally be worth it. On the colony world of New, Governor was dealing with more immediate problems. The colony had grown fast in the past 10 years. Over 4 million people now called it home. They had built cities and farms and schools. Children played in parks under an alien sun. It was a good life. But was worried. The Council defense stations that orbited her world had been acting strangely. Twice this week, they had gone offline for maintenance without warning. When she asked the Council representatives about it, they gave her vague answers. "Nothing to worry about, Governor," they said. "Routine procedures." Did not believe them. She had been a soldier before she became a politician. She knew when someone was hiding something. In her office, she called up her old friend Sergeant. He was in charge of the ground defense forces. He was a big man with a face and hands that had seen too many battles. She said, "I want you to run extra drills this week, full readiness exercises." Raised an eyebrow. "You expecting trouble?" "I do not know what I am expecting, but something feels wrong. I want our people ready for anything." Nodded slowly. He trusted his instincts. They had kept him alive more than once. "I will have the troops ready," he said. "Whatever comes, we will face it." Back on the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Park received a priority message. His face went pale as he read it. "What is it, Admiral?" asked. Park's voice was heavy. "The outer Reavers, they have changed course. They are heading toward Nu. Felt her blood turn cold. Nu was a civilian world. Millions of people lived there, and Earth's fleet was on the wrong side of Council space, exactly where the Council had sent them. "How long until they reach the colony?" she asked. 18 hours, Park said. "It will take us 22 hours to get there at maximum speed." 4 hours. 4 hours too late, unless the Council defense stations could hold them off. Park began giving orders. The fleet changed course. Every engine was pushed to its limit. Across the ships, men and women worked without rest, trying to squeeze every bit of speed from their vessels. But deep in his heart, Park felt a terrible fear growing. Something was very wrong, and he could not shake the feeling that by the time they reached Nu, it would already be too late. The stars continued to pass by, cold and silent, and somewhere in the darkness the Reavers were coming. The sky above Nu turned red with fire. The outer Reavers came like a plague of metal locusts, their ships dark and twisted and hungry for destruction. Governor watched from her command bunker as the first wave descended on her world. "Why are the defense stations not firing?" she shouted into her communicator. "Get me the Council station commanders now." But there was no answer. The massive orbital platforms that were supposed to protect her people floated silent and dead in space. Their weapons did not fire. Their shields did not activate. They just hung there like broken toys while the Reavers poured through. Sargent was already moving. He gathered his soldiers and sent them to protect the evacuation centers. Civilians were running through the streets, carrying children and whatever belongings they could grab. The sound of explosions echoed across the city. "Move faster," yelled at his troops. "Get those people to the underground shelters. Go, go, go." A Reaver landing craft crashed down 3 blocks away. The creatures that poured out were nightmares made of flesh and metal. They did not speak or negotiate. They only killed. Raised his rifle and fired. His soldiers formed a line beside him. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare a person for the horror of facing Reavers in combat. In her command bunker, kept trying to reach the Council. She sent messages to every channel, every frequency, every station she could think of. The responses she received were cold and formal. "Your request has been noted. Council forces are engaged elsewhere. Maintain your position." "Maintain my position," screamed at the screen. "My people are dying. Where are the reinforcements? Where is the fleet?" She knew where the fleet was. Admiral Park had sent her a message hours ago. He was coming as fast as he could, but he was too far away. The Council had sent him too far away. That thought kept repeating in her mind. Too far away, almost as if someone had planned it that way. On the eternal dawn, Admiral Park stood rigid as stone. His ships were pushing their engines beyond safe limits. 2 vessels had already reported damage from the strain. He did not care. He had to reach Nu. Lieutenant Commander worked at her station with tears running down her face. She had family on Nu, a cousin, 2 aunts. Their faces kept flashing in her mind as she watched the battle reports come in. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from Dr. Shin on the research station." Park frowned. Shin was a who studied alien languages. Why would she be contacting them now? "Put her through," he ordered. The face that appeared on screen was pale with fear and anger. Dr. Shin was an older woman, quiet and scholarly, but right now her eyes burned with fury. "Admiral Park," she said, "I have intercepted and decoded a classified Council transmission. You need to see this immediately." What she showed him broke something inside him. The transmission was between thee and the commanders of the defense stations. The orders were clear. Stand down. Do not engage the Reavers. Let them pass. And the reason was even clearer. Humanity was growing too strong. Their population was expanding too fast. Their influence was spreading too far. The Council had decided it was time to cut them back, to remind them of their place. The Reaver attack was not random. It was allowed. It was encouraged. The council had opened the door and invited the monsters in. Park read the transmission 3 times. His hands began to shake, not with fear, with rage. "How long have they known?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I found evidence of at least 3 previous attacks," Dr. Shin said, "all on human colonies, all with similar patterns. The Council has been using the Reavers to control our population for decades." On the surface of Nu, Sargent fought like a man possessed. His soldiers fell around him, but he kept firing, kept moving, kept protecting the civilians behind him. A Reaver blade caught his right arm. He felt the cold metal slice through flesh and bone. He screamed, but he did not stop. He switched his rifle to his left hand and kept shooting. By the time the sun set on Nu, the streets were filled with blood. 1.8 million people died that day. Men and women and children who had done nothing wrong, who had trusted the council to protect them. Governor survived. She stood in the ruins of her city and looked at the bodies around her. She did not cry. She was past crying. Something cold and hard had formed in her chest. When Admiral Park's fleet finally arrived, 4 hours too late, he found a world in ashes. The Reavers had taken what they wanted and left. The Council defense stations had finally come back online, as if nothing had happened. Park stood in the command center with and looked at the decoded transmissions, the proof of betrayal, the evidence of murder. "They used us," said. "All these years, all our sacrifices, they were just keeping us weak." Park nodded slowly. His face was like carved stone, but behind his eyes something terrible was burning. "They made a mistake," he said quietly. "They thought we would accept this. They thought we would bow our heads and mourn our dead and go back to serving them." He turned to face her. His voice was ice and fire together. "They were wrong." The great hall in Geneva was silent. Earth's leaders sat around a massive table, their faces gray with shock and grief. On the screens around them, images of Nu played in an endless loop. Burning cities, running children, bodies in the streets. Supreme Chancellor O stood at the head of the table. She was 60 years old, a woman who had spent her life building bridges and making peace. She had believed in the council. She had trusted them. Now that trust was ash in her mouth. "Tell me again," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Tell me exactly what they did." Director No stepped forward. She was the head of Earth's intelligence services, a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. In her hands, she held a data pad with files that would change everything. "The transmissions are authentic, Chancellor. We have them 7 times. The personally ordered the defense stations to stand down. The attack on Nu was deliberate." Counselor Bay sat in the corner, his head in his hands. The man who had spent 20 years believing in the council's promises looked broken. His dreams of full membership, of partnership, of equality, they were all lies. They had always been lies. "I trusted them," he whispered. "I told our people to trust them. This is my fault." "No," Chancellor O said firmly. "This is their fault. They lied, they murdered. They betrayed every promise they ever made to us. The guilt belongs to them." General stood up. He was a large man with a soldier's bearing and a strategist's mind. Unlike some others, he had never fully trusted the council. He had warned against relying on them too much. Now his warning seemed like prophecy. "There is more," he said. "I have been investigating our military cooperation with the council for years. The technology they gave us was always outdated. Sometimes it was deliberately flawed. Meanwhile, they were copying our innovations and using them for themselves." He pulled up more files on the main screen. Reports, analysis, evidence of systematic theft and sabotage. "They never intended to make us equals. They wanted soldiers who would fight and die on their command. They wanted workers who would build and create for their benefit. They wanted a population small enough to control but large enough to use." The room erupted in angry voices. Some demanded immediate war, others called for diplomatic solutions. A few suggested withdrawal from council space entirely. Chancellor O raised her hand, and silence fell. "I understand your anger," she said. "I share it. But anger without planning is just noise. We need to think clearly about what comes next." She looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. "The Council has 12 member species. They have fleets that outnumber ours 5 to 1. If we act rashly, they will destroy us. But if we act wisely, we can make them pay for what they have done." General smiled grimly. "Chancellor, there are things the Council does not know about us. Projects we have kept secret, weapons we have developed in hidden facilities." He began describing Earth's secret programs. Faster-than-light communication jammers that could blind enemy fleets, gravity well disruptors that could tear ships apart from the inside, new engines that made their vessels faster than anything the Council had seen. "We are not as weak as they think," said. "We have been preparing for betrayal for a long time. We just hoped it would never come." Chancellor O nodded slowly. "Then we prepare, quietly, carefully. We recall our forces from Council space. We strengthen our defenses, and when we are ready, we show them what humanity is truly capable of." She activated a communication channel. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. He was still at Nu, overseeing the rescue operations. Behind him, smoke still rose from the ruined cities. "Admiral," the Chancellor said, "I am authorizing Operation Reckoning. Begin recalling all human forces. Do it quietly. The Council must not know what we are planning." Park saluted. "Understood, Chancellor, it will be done." On another screen, Lieutenant Commander appeared. Her face was tired but determined. She had not slept in 3 days. "Lieutenant Commander," the Chancellor said, "you are promoted to captain. You will take command of our first Dreadnought-class warship, the Fury of Soul. Can you handle that responsibility?" Straightened her back. "Yes, Chancellor, I will not fail you." After the meeting ended, Chancellor O stood alone by the window. She looked out at the city of Geneva, at the people walking through the streets below, unaware of the storm that was coming. Director No approached her quietly. "Chancellor, are you certain about this path? War with the Council will cost many lives." O did not turn around. "They killed nearly 2 million of our people. They have been killing us for decades. If we do nothing, they will continue until there is nothing left of us." She finally turned, and her eyes were hard as diamonds. "I did not choose this war, Director. They chose it when they murdered our children. All I am choosing is how we will end it." Outside the window, the sun was setting. The sky turned red, the same color as the sky over Nu when the Reavers came. But this time, the red did not mean defeat. This time it meant war. 6 months had passed since Nu. The Council thought humanity was broken. They saw the human ships returning to Earth space. They watched the human ambassadors withdraw from Council stations. They assumed it was surrender. They were wrong. Captain stood on the bridge of the Fury of Soul. The Dreadnought was the largest ship humanity had ever built, a mountain of metal and weapons that moved through space like a hunting wolf. Around her, 30 smaller vessels waited in the darkness between stars, their engines cold, their systems silent. "Target acquired," her tactical officer reported. "This flagship, minimal escort, they are not expecting trouble." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They never expect trouble from us. That is about to change." She gave the order. The human fleet surged forward like arrows from a bow. The never saw them coming. Human jamming devices blocked their communications. Human disruptors tore through their shields. In 12 minutes, the battle was over. The mighty flagship drifted dead in space, its crew captured, its leader in chains. Admiral Park arrived on the captured ship personally. He walked through the corridors until he found the surrounded by human soldiers. The insect-like creature stared at him with its compound eyes, showing no fear. "You are making a mistake," the said through his translator. "The Council will destroy your species for this." Park stepped closer until he was face to face with the alien leader. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You called us primitive, you called us expendable, you murdered our children and thought we would accept it." He leaned in. "You were wrong on all three counts." Across Council space, the human response was beginning. It was not random violence. It was not blind revenge. It was precise, calculated, and devastating. General coordinated attacks on 12 Council military installations at the same time. Human forces struck fast and hard, destroying weapons facilities and communication hubs before disappearing back into the darkness. The Council's military network began to fall apart. On the ground, Sargent led special forces to rescue human prisoners. Many humans had been captured over the years and held on Council worlds for experimentation and labor. Had a new cybernetic arm now, stronger than his original. He used it to tear through enemy soldiers like paper. "Move," he shouted to the freed prisoners. "Get to the transports, we are taking you home." An old woman grabbed his arm as he helped her walk. "I thought everyone had forgotten us," she said, crying. Shook his head. "Humanity never forgets its own, never." Governor had a different mission. She had become the voice of the survivors, a symbol of what humanity had suffered. Now she broadcast a message to every species in Council space. Her face appeared on screens across 100 worlds. Her voice was calm but powerful. "I am Governor of New. 6 months ago, the Council murdered nearly 2 million of my people. They did this not because we threatened them, but because they feared our growth. They wanted to keep us small. They wanted to keep us weak." She held up the decoded transmissions for all to see. "This is the proof. The Council has been manipulating all of us. They decide which species prospers and which species suffers. They choose who lives and who dies. They are not protectors. They are tyrants." Her message spread like fire. Other species began to question. Some demanded investigations, some their support from the Council. The carefully built alliance was cracking. The ambassador, a reptilian being who had always respected humans, made a choice. He contacted Admiral Park directly. "We did not know," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "They have served the Council for 200 years. We believed they were just. We were fools." "What will you do now?" Park asked. The ambassador was silent for a moment. Then he spoke words that changed everything. "The stand with humanity. 3 of our battle fleets are at your command." It was the first crack in the Council's power, but it would not be the last. Chancellor O addressed the galaxy from Earth. She stood before cameras that broadcast her image across every system, every world, every ship that could receive the signal. "We came to you in peace," she said. "We offered our hands in friendship. We fought your wars. We bled on your battlefields. We buried our dead in your soil, and you repaid us with treachery." Her voice grew stronger, harder, filled with the cold fire of righteous anger. "We did not want this war. We begged for peace. We asked only for fairness, but you gave us lies and murder instead. So hear me now, Council, hear me well." She leaned forward, her eyes burning into the camera. "Today, humanity collects what it is owed. Today, we teach you what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Today, you learn why the old stories on our world warned against waking sleeping giants." She paused, letting her words sink in across the stars. "You wanted soldiers. We will show you soldiers. You wanted warriors. We will show you war. And when the fire finally dies and the silence returns, you will remember this moment. You will remember the day you pushed humanity too far." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had thought humans were harmless, primitive, expendable, watched in shock as the weak species rose up with fury they had never imagined. The war had truly begun. 1 year after the war began, the burned. Not the planet itself, but the great orbital stations that had been symbols of their power for centuries. Human ships had torn through their defenses like wind through leaves. The Council's mightiest species had fallen. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched the last resistance crumble. He felt no joy. Too many had died on both sides for joy, but he felt something else. Justice. Finally, justice. Captain brought her fury of soul alongside his ship. Her voice came through the communication channel, tired but proud. "It is over, Admiral. They have surrendered. The Council is requesting terms." Park nodded slowly. "Bring them to the tribunal. It is time for him to answer for his crimes." The trial was held on a neutral station, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Dr. Shin served as translator, making sure every species understood every word. The evidence was presented clearly and completely. The decoded transmissions, the death counts, the decades of manipulation and murder. They sat in silence as species after species condemned him. Even his former allies turned away. The truth was too clear to deny. "You thought you were gods," the human prosecutor said. "You decided who would live and who would die. You played with species like toys, but you forgot something important." She leaned forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "We are not toys. We are not soldiers for your games. We are thinking, feeling beings who love our children and mourn our dead. And when you hurt us, we remember. We always remember." The verdict was unanimous. He and his conspirators were found guilty of genocide and crimes against sentient life. They would spend the rest of their existence in prison, watching the galaxy they had tried to control grow and change without them. After the trial, the real work began. Counselor Bay, the man who had once believed in the Council's lies, now led the effort to build something new, a reformed coalition based on equality and transparency. Humanity was not just a member this time. They were founders. "We will not make the same mistakes," said at the first meeting of the new alliance. "Every species will have a voice. Every decision will be open. No more secrets. No more manipulation. We build this together or we do not build it at all." The ambassador stood with him, representing the species that had chosen to stand with humanity. Other species joined too. Those who had been victims of council schemes. Those who had watched in silence and now felt shame. Together, they began to create something better. On New, Governor watched the sun rise over a city being reborn. Construction machines worked day and night. New buildings rose from the ashes. Gardens bloomed where blood had once soaked the ground. In the center of the city, a memorial stood. It was simple but powerful, a wall of black stone with nearly 2 million names carved into it. Every person who had died, every child, every parent, every friend. Their names would stay there forever, a reminder of what was lost and why it must never happen again. Sergeant visited the memorial every week. His cybernetic arm gleamed in the sunlight as he traced the names of soldiers who had fought beside him. He never cried. He had no tears left, but he never forgot. Now he spent his days training the next generation. Young soldiers who would protect humanity not through blind obedience, but through strength and vigilance. "Trust is earned," he told them. "Respect is earned. The galaxy learned that lesson the hard way. Make sure they never forget it." Director No built a new intelligence network that reached across the stars. Human eyes and ears in every system, watching for threats, guarding against betrayal. Never again would humanity be caught sleeping. "We were naive once," she told her agents. "We believed good intentions were enough. Now we know better. Peace must be protected. Freedom must be defended, and we are the ones who will do it." Admiral Park retired from active service. His war was over. Captain took his place, becoming the youngest admiral in human history. She stood where he had once stood, looking out at the stars with eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. "What do we do now?" her first officer asked. "We live," said simply. "We grow, we explore. We remember what they did to us, but we do not let it poison who we become. That is how we truly win. Chancellor O gave one final address before stepping down from her position. Her hair had gone white during the war. Her face showed every battle, every loss, every sleepless night. But her voice was strong. "We did not seek this war," she said. "We would have been content to live in peace, to share the stars with our neighbors, to grow alongside them as friends. But when the galaxy tried to break us, they learned something every tyrant eventually learns." She paused, looking into the camera with eyes that had seen the worst of the universe and still believed in the best of humanity. "We do not break, we bend, we bleed, we grieve, and then we rise. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. And that is who we will remain, no matter how many stars we spread across." Years later, young species entering galactic society would hear the story of humanity. They would learn about the betrayal, the massacre, the war that followed. They would see images of burning worlds and broken fleets. But mostly, they would learn the lesson that the Council learned too late. Humanity was kind. Humanity was patient. Humanity wanted peace above all things. But when you harmed their family, when you murdered their children, when you pushed them beyond all limits, you would discover something terrible. Humanity's rage was like a sleeping dragon. It could wait for years. It could wait for decades. It could wait until you forgot it existed. And then it would wake. And when it woke, nothing in the galaxy could stop it.